Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're doing something pretty exciting today, diving deep into all things leadership with John Maxwell's Developing the Leader Within You 2.0.
Yeah, a classic for a reason, right?
Yeah,
This book, it's packed with so much good stuff.
it really is. So for our listeners out there, get ready to uncover those timeless principles that Maxwell lays out, the ones that can help anyone lead, no matter where they are in life.
Yeah,
You know, it's not just for CEOs and executives.
totally. And you know what I think is so great about this book is that Maxwell, he cuts right through all the noise, all those misconceptions about leadership. Like right from the get-go, he debunks those myths. It's not about, having a fancy title
Right.
or years of
Or
experience.
even like a big paycheck.
Exactly. It's much deeper than that.
It's refreshing, isn't it? Like so
Yeah.
many people, they fall into this trap of thinking, okay, once I get that promotion, once I reach that management position, then bam, then I'll become a leader.
Right, like it's some magical switch that flips.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But Maxwell's like, nope, not how it works. You got to start developing those leadership skills now, wherever you are and whatever you're doing.
Right now. This is
Yeah.
all about taking action.
Absolutely. And one of the most impactful takeaways from the book, at least for me, was this idea that Maxwell talks about that everyone, and I mean everyone, influences someone.
The ripple effect.
Yes. Think
Yeah.
about it. Every single choice you make, every action you take, it creates these ripples that impact the people around you.
Mm.
So in a way, you're already leading, whether you realize it or not.
It's true. It's about recognizing that influence.
And it's not limited to just CEOs and politicians, right?
No, not at all.
It's about those everyday choices we're making, the ways we interact with our families, our friends, our colleagues.
Exactly. It's about those small moments, those small interactions that actually make a big difference.
Yeah, and Maxwell, he takes this idea of influence even further with his 3 levels of leadership: permission, production, and people development.
Oh, those are so good. And I think they really clarify what it means to lead at different levels.
Yeah, let's break those down a bit. So at the permission level, it's all about what? Building trust, building those strong relationships. People follow you because they want to, not because they have to.
Right. It's about earning respect. It's like that teacher everyone loved in school,
Oh, totally.
the one who made learning fun and engaging. You wanted to be in their class to impress them, to do your best work.
Yes, because you respected them. You wanted to follow their lead.
Exactly. That's leadership by permission.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, then you have the production level.
Mhm.
And this is where, a lot of, I think, more traditional ideas of leadership come into play.
Yeah.
It's about achieving goals, hitting those targets, getting things done.
Right. The result-oriented stuff.
Yeah. And it's important, obviously. You need to produce results.
Mhm.
But Maxwell argues, and I think this is key, that many leaders, they kind of get stuck at this level.
Oh, absolutely. They get caught up in that hustle.
They get so focused on the numbers, the bottom line, that they forget about, well, the people.
The human side of it all.
Exactly.
And that's where the magic really happens, the people development level. Because
Mhm.
it's not just about what you achieve, but it's about who you bring along with you.
It's about empowering others to reach their full potential.
Yeah. Investing in your team, helping them grow, empowering them to become leaders themselves.
Creating a legacy,
Yeah,
not just a to-do list.
precisely. And speaking of to-do lists, Maxwell, he dives into this very real struggle that, let's be honest, we all face,
Oh, yeah.
which is having way too much to do
Always.
and not nearly enough time.
The never-ending to-do list.
Right. And he uses this fantastic analogy of the lion tamer and the chair.
Wait, what? A chair? How does that even work with a lion?
I know it sounds strange, right? But just stick with me for a second. So the lion tamer, they use a chair to actually paralyze a lion. They hold it in front of the lion's face, and the lion tries to focus on all 4 legs of the chair at once. And that's the problem, that scattered attention. The lion becomes overwhelmed.
Ah, I see where you're going with this. It's like when we have a million things on our plates and we're trying to juggle it all at once, we get overwhelmed.
Exactly. We spread ourselves too thin, we lose focus, and we end up accomplishing very little.
So we become the overwhelmed lion.
Precisely. It's like we're stuck in that lion-tamer chair effect.
So then how do we break free? How do we escape the chair?
Well, that's where Maxwell's wisdom comes in. He offers this really practical framework called the 3 Rs for setting priorities. And it's all about being intentional, making conscious choices about where we're spending our time and energy.
Okay, I like it. The 3 Rs. So what are they?
Requirement, return, and reward.
I like that. Requirement, return, reward. So let's dig into each one, starting with requirement. What's that all about?
So Requirement really comes down to identifying those non-negotiables, the must-do tasks, the things that are essential to your role, you know?
Yeah, like the core responsibilities you absolutely can't ignore.
Exactly. It's about getting clear on those core things and then, and this is key, delegating or eliminating the rest. If you're spending all your time on things that others could do,
You're not focusing on the most important stuff.
right. And Maxwell, he gives this great tip. He suggests imagining that you could go to your boss or your team and say, what absolutely has to be done by me and no one else.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's about getting real about what only you can do.
Exactly. And that leads us to return, which is all about maximizing your impact. Making sure that your time and energy are being invested in the areas where they'll make the biggest difference.
So are you spending your time on tasks that light you up or tasks that drain you?
That's a great way to put it.
Hmm.
Are you leveraging your strengths, or are you bogged down in stuff that, frankly, someone else might be better suited for?
It's about playing to your strengths. Kind of like that story Maxwell tells about Gooch, the salesman who could sell anything
But couldn't spell to save his life.
right. But his boss loved him.
Absolutely. Because Gooch brought in the sales.
He focused on
Yeah.
his strength, selling, and that's where he really shined. Okay, so we've got requirements as non-negotiables. We've got return, maximizing your impact by focusing on your strengths. And then finally, there's reward, which this one sounds a bit more, well, rewarding.
It is, because this art is all about finding the joy in what you do.
That's so important.
It really is. And I think it often gets overlooked. But Maxwell, he suggests finding those activities that light you up, those things that you would do even if you weren't getting paid for them.
So what are you passionate about?
Yes. What do you enjoy doing just for the pure joy of it? And how can you bring more of that into your work?
Because when you're passionate about what you do, it doesn't even feel like work.
Exactly. It becomes almost effortless. And Maxwell actually gives this advice. Find something you do for free and become so good at it that people pay you for it.
I love that. So it's not just about finding a job. It's about finding that intersection of your skills, your passions, and, well, something that people are willing to pay for.
It's a recipe for a fulfilling career, for sure. But Maxwell, he doesn't stop at just productivity and passion. He also dives into the crucial role of character in leadership.
Yeah, he talks about how, and this is a great line, character makes you bigger on the inside than on the outside.
Oh, I love that quote.
Right. It's about who you are at your core, not just the image you're projecting to the world.
It's about integrity, about doing the right thing even when no one's watching.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this idea of being bigger on the inside.
So for Maxwell, it all boils down to cultivating those essential character qualities. And he highlights 4 in particular: authenticity, self-management, humility, and courage.
Those are some powerful traits. Yeah, let's unpack those a bit. Let's start with authenticity. What does that really mean in the context of leadership?
Well, for Maxwell, authenticity is about being genuine, like
Yeah.
really being true to yourself. And that means embracing both the good and the not so good parts of who you are.
It's about letting people see the real you, not some like perfectly curated version that you present to the world.
Exactly. It's so easy to fall into that trap, especially these days with social media and everything being so, so polished.
Oh, totally. Everyone's trying to present this perfect image, this perfect life, but it's exhausting. And honestly, it's not even real.
Right. We all have our struggles, our insecurities. We all make mistakes. And trying to hide that, it just creates this disconnect.
It's like you're living behind a mask.
Exactly. And people can sense that. Authenticity is about being brave enough to take off the mask and say, this is me, flaws and all.
Love it. Okay, so authenticity check. Now, what about self-management? That sounds
Yeah.
like a big one.
It is. It's huge because self-management, it's really about mastering yourself, right? It's about controlling those impulses, managing your emotions, making conscious choices that are aligned with your values. It's about being disciplined in all areas of your life. Maxwell, he says, leading ourselves is often the most difficult task we face every day.
And he's not wrong. It's so much easier to give advice than actually take it yourself,
Oh, tell me about it. It's like that old saying, do as I say, not as I do.
which is the opposite of good leadership.
Exactly. Leaders, they need to be role models, right?
Yeah?
They need to embody the behavior they expect from their team, and that takes self-management. It takes self-discipline.
So before you can lead others, you have to master yourself.
Got it.
Okay, now let's talk about humility. This is a tricky one, I think, because there's often a misunderstanding of what humility really means.
It really is. Because it's not about thinking less of yourself,
Right.
but it's about thinking of yourself less.
There you go. It's about shifting that focus away from yourself and putting the needs of others first.
Yes. And recognizing that you don't have all the answers. Being open to feedback, being willing to learn from others, even from those you might consider below you.
And admitting when you're wrong.
Yes. That takes courage, which brings us to the final character trait Maxwell highlights: courage.
Because to be humble, to admit you don't know everything, that it takes guts.
It does, because courage, it's not the absence of fear, right? It's about doing the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it's unpopular, even when it feels scary.
It's about standing up for what you believe in, even when it would be easier to stay silent.
Exactly. It's about having that inner compass, that moral backbone that guides you when things get tough. And, these 4 dimensions of character that Maxwell lays out, they really paint a picture of what it means to be a leader from the inside out.
It's about building that strong foundation, that inner strength and integrity. And I love how Maxwell illustrates this with that story of the young Englishman preparing for a mountain climb. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah. The guy shows up with, all this unnecessary stuff, a fancy blanket, cameras.
So buying
Mm,
wine for a
yeah.
mountain climb. I
Yeah.
know, right? And of course the guide's like, dude, you can only take the essentials. This is a serious climb.
But the Englishman, he doesn't listen. He's so focused on all the extras.
Too focused on the image.
Exactly. And he ends up, not getting very far.
Weighed down by all that extra baggage. And I think that's like a powerful metaphor for life. It's so easy to get caught up in accumulating things, titles, possessions, even relationships that aren't serving us. But those things, they just weigh us down. They prevent us from reaching our full potential.
It's about simplifying, focusing on what truly matters. And sometimes that means letting go of things, even people that are no longer serving us.
It's about packing light so we can climb higher. I love that. Okay, so we've talked about character. Now, Maxwell also talks about this idea he talks about embracing change.
Yes. And he's very open about the fact that change can be really hard. He even uses this simple example of clasping your hands together and then switching which thumb is on top. Have you ever tried that?
Yeah. It feels so weird.
Right. It's such a small change, but it just feels wrong somehow. And Maxwell uses that to illustrate how our brains, they like patterns, they like
We're
familiarity.
creatures of habit.
Totally. So even the smallest change can feel really uncomfortable. But here's the thing, and I think this is so important. Maxwell, he argues that discomfort, that awkwardness we feel when we're trying something new, that's actually a sign of growth.
It's like we're stretching, expanding our capacity.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like he compares it to cleaning out a cluttered closet,
Oh, love that analogy, because we all have that closet, right?
Yes. The one that's overflowing with clothes we haven't worn in years. And it can be hard to let go of that stuff.
It's familiar. It's comfortable.
Right. But to make room for new clothes, for better things, you got to get rid of the old stuff. And it's the same with personal growth, right? Sometimes we have to let go of old habits, old beliefs, maybe even old relationships to create space for something new and better to come into our lives.
So change can be uncomfortable, but it's often necessary for growth. Okay, so we've got character, we've got change. What else does Maxwell see as essential for leadership?
He talks a lot about having what he calls a whatever it takes attitude.
Ah, yes, that unwavering commitment to your goals, that refusal to give up even when things get tough.
Exactly. It's that grit, that determination that separates those who simply dream about success from those who actually achieve it. And he tells this great story about a man who came up to him at a conference and said, "Man, I wish I'd heard you speak 20 years ago. It would have changed my life." And you know what Maxwell said?
What did he say?
He said, "Well, 20 years ago, I couldn't have taught you what I'm teaching you today."
I love that because it speaks to this idea that, we're all on this journey of growth, and it's never too late to learn, to evolve, to adopt that whatever it takes attitude. And a big part of that, I think, is reframing how we view failure.
Oh, absolutely. Failure is just part of the process.
It's not the end of the story.
Yeah.
It's just a plot twist. And Maxwell, he talks about this idea of re-entering the race.
Oh, that's a good one. It's so easy to just give up when you stumble.
Yeah.
But it's about getting back up, dusting yourself off, and getting back in the game. And you know what? You come back stronger, wiser.
With more experience.
Yeah.
And you bring all of those lessons learned with you. Okay, so we've got the whatever it takes attitude. But that attitude, it needs to be directed towards something, right? Some kind of guiding purpose.
Exactly. That's where vision comes in, having that clear picture of where you're headed, that North Star that keeps you on track and inspires you to keep moving forward.
So it's about identifying your why, the driving force behind your actions.
Exactly. And Maxwell, he illustrates this beautifully with the story of Bishop Milton Wright. You familiar with him?
Refresh my memory.
He was a bishop in late 1800s, early 1900s, and he was convinced, absolutely convinced, that human flight was impossible. He even said only angels are intended to fly. And guess what? It was his own sons, Orville and Wilbur.
Wright brothers.
Yes, the Wright brothers, who ended up proving him wrong. And, Maxwell uses this story to highlight how limiting beliefs can be.
Because here's a guy, Bishop Wright, who genuinely believed that what his sons achieved was impossible.
Right. It just goes to show we all live under the same sky, but we don't all have the same horizons.
Love that. So true. And sometimes it takes someone with a bigger vision, someone who dares to dream beyond what's considered possible, to show us what we're truly capable of achieving. So it's not enough to just have a vision for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We need to share that vision with others.
Exactly. Leaders, they cast a vision that inspires others to action. They get people excited about what's possible. And Maxwell, he makes this point that a compelling vision, it actually naturally divides people.
Divides.
Yeah. And he means that in a good way, because a clear vision, it clarifies who's on board with where you're headed and who's not. And that's okay. It's actually a good thing because it helps you build a team of people who are truly aligned with your goals. Okay, so we've got vision, we've got that whatever it takes attitude, but there's one more crucial ingredient we need to talk about, and that is self-discipline.
Ah, yes, self-discipline, the not so sexy but oh so important ingredient for success in any area of life, really.
And Maxwell, he calls self-discipline the price tag of leadership. It's the non-negotiable cost of achieving lasting success.
It's about making those tough choices, even when you don't feel like it, even when it would be easier to just, hit that snooze button or scroll through social media. It's about showing up consistently, even when you're tired, even when you're not motivated.
He quotes President Harry Truman, who said, and this is such a good quote, "In reading the lives of great men, I have found that the first victory they won was over themselves. Self-discipline with all of them came first."
And I think that's such a powerful insight. You can't lead others effectively if you can't even lead yourself. You can't ask your team to be disciplined, to go the extra mile, if you're not willing to do the same.
And he uses this image of leadership being an uphill climb. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And it requires consistent effort, consistent discipline. You can't just rely on motivation because motivation comes and goes.
It's fleeting. Discipline, though, that's what keeps you going even when you don't feel like it.
Exactly. It's that inner drive, that commitment to the long game. And Maxwell, he talks about this idea of paying now and playing later. It's about delaying gratification, putting in the hard work in the present so you can reap the rewards in the future.
Kind of like choosing to go for a run instead of watching TV, right?
Yeah.
It's not always the most appealing choice in the moment, but your future self will thank you for it.
Exactly. And something else that Maxwell points out is that self-discipline, it's usually easiest to develop in areas where we already have some natural strengths and passions. What are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? Those are the areas where you're more likely to stick with it, even when it gets tough. He also talks about the importance of consistency.
Oh, consistency is key.
It really is, because it's not always flashy or exciting, but it's those small, consistent efforts over time that lead to the biggest gains, just like compound interest.
Those small, consistent actions, they add up over time.
They do. It's the tortoise and the hare. Slow and steady wins the race. And ultimately, Maxwell reminds us that self-discipline, just like leadership itself, is a journey, not a destination. It's something we're constantly working on, striving to improve.
It's a lifelong pursuit. And I think that's a great note to kind of bring us to a close here. We've covered so much ground in our deep dive into John Maxwell's Developing the Leader Within You. We talk about those common misconceptions about leadership, how it's not about your title or your position, but about the choices you make every single day.
It's about who you are at your core, the impact you have on others.
Exactly. And we delved into those key principles that Maxwell outlines. The importance of prioritizing, of developing those essential character qualities, of embracing change, and of cultivating self-discipline.
And of course, of having that clear vision, that why, that drives you forward. It's about stepping into your potential, becoming the best version of yourself, both for yourself and for those you lead.
Because ultimately, leadership is not about wielding power, but about empowering others.
It's about making a positive difference in the world.
And it starts with you.
So as we wrap up, we want to leave you with this question. What one action will you take today to cultivate your own leadership potential? What small step can you take to move closer to that vision you have for yourself, for your team, for the world? Think about it, embrace it, and go make it happen.